Hi everyone. Today we are going to make a water cycle in a bag. Now, some of you have made this before and some have not. So let's just start from the beginning. The water cycle describes how water evaporates from the Earth's surface, and as it goes up in the atmosphere, it cools and condenses and then falls back down as rain. It collects and then it starts all over. That is the water cycle. So let's look at each of those parts of the water cycle. Water traveling round and round. Okay. Let's start with, it's a cycle, so we can kind of start wherever. Let's start with collection. Okay. Water that is sitting in lakes and sitting in the oceans, and the heat is warming it up. And as it warms up, just like your hot cocoa or a cup of tea, vapor rises. Water vapor, as little water molecules that are now vapor and invisible, rise up. Now, if we look at the ocean, it doesn't look like a hot cup of tea with steam coming up, but it's there, it's just invisible. Now, as the water rises, here's a good picture of water rising from a lake. Sorry, a lot of reflection here. Now, as it rises, and this process of the water turning from water collected, to being molecules going up in the air is called evaporation. Evaporates. And then it goes up in the atmosphere, and what happens? It gets cooler. And as it gets cooler, all the little water molecules come together and they snuggle up and they cuddle up and they get closer and closer and closer and closer. And this is called condensation. Now, I put some ice in a cup of cold water before this lesson. And do you see those little dots on the side of the glass? That wetness? There's already condensation happening from the cold water inside. Now I can see those water molecules coming together. And that's, excuse me, and that's what's going to happen in our water cycle in a bag. So it collects, they snuggle up together and they condense, and that is condensation. And we can see that in the form of clouds. And so when we look up at clouds, those are lots and lots of water molecules all huddled together. Eventually, though, they become too heavy. There's so many of them in there, they all can't stay together up in the sky. It becomes too heavy, and then it falls down as rain. And the rain is heavy groupings of the water molecules together falling. Or maybe it'll freeze, and then it would be snow, or maybe even hail. And then it falls, and it collects, and our cycle begins again. So here we have it. We've got our collection, and then the sun is shining down on it, and now it's evaporating up and forming clouds, and then the clouds become heavier and heavier, so that evaporation condenses into clouds, and then the condensation eventually leads to precipitation, and it falls as rain or snow, and then runs off back into a collection place like an ocean or a lake. And that, my friends, is the water cycle. So to make a water cycle in a bag, you need water, a water cycle, a bag, because it's a water cycle in a bag. I chose this one because it doesn't have any markings on it, but you may not have this at the house. So whatever you have, hopefully you have something. If not, you could draw the water cycle. And I'm going to use a Sharpie so that I can write on the bag. And I'm going to make, waves, because I'm going to fill that up with water. Now, this wave area is the ocean, and I'm gonna write collection because this is my water collection. It's gonna be hard to show you. There we go. Now I'm gonna make some squiggly lines with arrows pointing up to show evaporation. And now those water molecules that are getting heated up by the sun, oop, I'm gonna draw sun too. That's what I have so far. Got my sun, evaporation, collection. Now those water molecules are gonna start cuddling up together as it gets cooler up there. And we're gonna call that condensation. And then it's just gonna get too heavy. And so this cloud, I'm gonna make a little darker because this is a storm cloud. And now it's gonna be too heavy and fall down as rain. And I'm gonna make a mountain just so that there's some rivers forming on the mountain for the water to fall into the ocean. And I'm gonna write precipitation. Remember, we spell the sound shun with T-I-O-N. I'll show you on the cards. Collection. T-I-O-N. Precipitation. Shun usually turns a verb into a noun. Condensation kind of means the act of. Evaporation. Okay. Now I'm going to put some water in here. Oh, that's refreshing. Now I accidentally got an ice cube in there, so I immediately got some condensation or splatters. But that's what your condensation is going to look like. Now I happen to have some blue dye that I'm going to make my ocean in. I'm assuming that many of you don't happen to have blue dye at your house, so you don't have to dye it. But you might, or maybe you have some frozen blackberries or something. Or maybe you have another creative way to dye the water if you want. So here is my water cycle in a bag. And I'm going to add tape to it. And I'm gonna tape it in a sunny window. And then I'm gonna watch that whole process happen. And if you look at one of these that was done a long time ago, it has the same water, the same amount of water as when I first did it, because it has nowhere to go. Now, if I were just doing it in an open glass like this, eventually the water would evaporate and there would be less water in the glass. But here, the cycle is happening all over again. It's gonna condense and I'm gonna see the condensation in the bag, and then it's gonna fall back down as rain and then continue. And so I'll always have the same amount because it's a cycle. Thank you for joining me, friends.